The USDA crop report beats the grain markets, and Jerry Gidel is ready to weigh in on that right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. So Jerry, what did you feel about the report starting by corn?
Well, the market action was at this point, generally the numbers were not that different than the USDA's, the trade's expectation of the USDA's on this month. But the one factor that really kind of ended back that there was nothing super surprising on things at this point. Actually in corn, to some extent, their final stocks and ending stocks estimate was slightly higher than expected. From there, they did end up taking 25 million out of old crop feed demand. So that's added to the new crop, and then along with the additional acres that came from the June report, turns out that we were higher than the 1.448 number at 1.48, and so that was a little negative, and it kind of things in it. I think the key thing that was also that day was the fact that the soybean carryover stock was about 20 million over the expectations. It was lower because of the reduced plantings that the USDA came up with there in the June acreage report that got cut off before we got all the plantings in. And so between the two of them, there wasn't any real big excitement. I wouldn't say it was a super bearish, but the problem was there was nothing really that bullish in either one of those. And then the wheat numbers came in generally as expected. The wheat crop size turned out to be on winter wheat a little higher than expected, but spring wheat was a little lower. So it all kind of balanced out to generally just as actually the winter wheat, the overall wheat number on stocks this year was lower than last year already. So that's another feature on here, and that's the reason why things are still looking to the overseas markets for wheat.
Yes, and this week we also had the news about the turkey deal.
Yes, that's been an ongoing proposal, an idea that's kept coming up for many things. The UN mediator kept keeping in light, and I guess eventually here they did find some type of agreement. Now, there's not a lot of details on how that's going to get accomplished, how long it might be open, what's going to go on with it. It's pretty wide open. There's still supposedly some final details that won't be done until they sign the thing this coming week. And so that's another feature, but that kind of kept a little bit of a lid on things, considering the fact that the market initially you would think that really would have pounded things, but we've already broken things pretty substantially here on concerns about inflation and liquidation from funds and things like that. So and to some extent the wheat market this time of year in the US is kind of into its post-harvest mentality, where we're trying to get some wheat moving out of the country and that type of thing. And so that's going to be something that needs to be watched closely, and will be highly important as we go forward here as to what some of the final details is. Now, the one thing people definitely need to remind themselves is that if the agreement's there, the possibility of anything quickly happening on shipments is, I'd have to say, 6 to 8 weeks out at the earliest. So in reality, the shipments of things from Ukraine will not really occur until this fall.
Yes, and also we have heat coming to the U.S. plains.
Yes, yes. Uh, that's been in the kind of the background of things in the longer range forecast, and it continues to be out there. Uh, Basically, the high pressure ridge that's been shifting back and forth in the U.S. here from the plains back out to the western areas, or they call the Four Corner states, and that it seems like it's now building back with pretty good vengeance for this coming week in that, and it's not going to be pacifically all the way to say east of the Mississippi with 100-degree temps, because that's what they're projecting here across the plains and near that for anything west of the Mississippi here. Maybe not all the way to Fargo, North Dakota, but in general, very, very tough looking scenario, because the important thing to remember is that right now we are in a situation where, because of this year's late plantings, we're going to have one of the higher percentages of the corn crop in the U.S. will be pollinating really this coming week on through the first week in August here, with probably at least 60, maybe as much as 65%, or 2/3 of the crop will be in that stage. And having heat at that magnitude is definitely not the best for your yield potential. And so that's the reason why this market has been very concerned about the U.S. weather situation. We've had some rains recently. We have provided, particularly in some areas of the Eastern Corn Belt, and that we've had some streaks across. And then just here in the last day or two, where there's been some rains that's come over the top of that ridge and basically hit Wisconsin, Northeast Illinois, parts of Indiana, and that. So it's an area where the weather conditions going forward are still going to be quite important for both corn and soybeans.
Yes, and specifically, what about the soybean side of things?
Well, the soybean side is still there's actually, interestingly enough, because of this year's late plantings and that the crop condition situation on beans, and interestingly enough, if beans in their early stages don't always look the best until you get those things up to the point where they can actually start covering the rows and that type of thing. So, and to some extent, the root system of soybeans don't really get spread out until later in the season to capture some of the moisture. They are a crop, though, that does take through the heat a little better during its flowering and setting stages situation, but it can't stand it forever. And that's the one thing that's important here as we go into the month of August. And that, and the big feature, of course, after this unexpectedly low USDA acreage report because of the survey not being able to capture the final plantings back in June, is the what kind of plantings did these producers come up with? Did they decide to go ahead and plant the acres that maybe they looked like they could, or they went ahead and took those acres into the prevent plant situation? And so that's probably as big a factor as the weather is going to be as to what size our crop soybeans in the U.S. Because the one thing that is anticipated this year is the fact that after a couple years of difficulties there in Brazil, that there's going to be a pretty hefty push on plantings in the South, in South America, and that particularly Brazil, to potentially boost up their output. Last year's 126 billion that the USDA is using. They're actually even expecting that to maybe go up 20 million metric tons. And that's going to be strong competition here as we go into the fall and wintertime in the U.S.
And what about next week? What are you following?
Well, of course, we're going to be watching that, the extent of that heat. that they're projecting at this point, and basically, if there's any type of over the ridge type of storm systems, they call them ridge runners type situation. If that is where they happen to come down, if it's all the way out in Indiana, Ohio, or if it's going to be back in Illinois, that type of thing is going to be highly important. Of course, then we're going to try to see some more details, of course, about what the agreement there between the Ukrainians, Russians, Turkish, and the Yukon actually works out to be, and maybe some ideas of when that thing would actually be back to functioning again. Even if we have an agreement we mentioned before, it's probably not going to happen. There's going to be a boat leaving Odessa here probably in the next day or two.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. You'll see you then.
You bet. Take care, and we'll keep an eye on the skies.